working with your spouse as an entrepreneur. Marriage and business, a lot of people say shouldn't mix, but we're mixing it, and we know a lot of successful people who are mixing it. So we wanted to go through what tips, what strategies we follow as a couple working in the same business together, not to mention the same office. We literally sit right next to each other. We live together.
It's a little excessive.
But what we did is we came up with some tips while we were out at dinner, and we thought, like, what are some of the things that we really hang our hat on? So Emily has some notes in her phone based on what tips we follow to be a successful couple in business as entrepreneurs.
And I think one thing we need to preface this with is it was definitely an adjustment. We've been working together for about a year now, and I think in the beginning there were a lot of little rifts and a lot of little mini fights, I would say. And so I think we've learned a lot along the way, and we've kind of had to adapt, which has been really helpful. But that's why I think these tips are going to be useful for anyone that's considering going into business together or partnering, or say one spouse has a business and the other is going to come on board. So I'm really excited for this.
Yeah, me too. First tip is to play to each other's strengths and weaknesses.
So really what's interesting is we are kind of opposites in every way except our core values. For example, Bill has like 1,000,001 ideas all at once. He wants to pursue them all, and then he's on to the next idea. Whereas I'm more so someone who values structure, and I like to complete the first task before moving on to the next.
Yep.
So what that's allowed us to do is accomplish big things while also taking risks, because if it were up to me, I don't think I would take as many risks as Bill would, and vice versa. If it were up to him, I don't think as many things would get pulled across the goal line, so to speak. So we've learned to really play to each other's strengths.
So, and a way that we do that is, like, one way that I've really learned how to collaborate with Emily based on us knowing each other's strengths and weaknesses. I've learned that when I start getting into solution mode, after I present many ideas and create urgency around those ideas, I've learned that the thing that stresses Emily out is when I go into suggesting 15 different solutions to one idea. That's not my strength. My strength on Colby is what's called a quick start. I'm a 9 out of 10 quick start, which means I basically can operate with no security, no sense of predictability. I can completely operate on risk and not really feel it. And so what I do is when I come up with tons of business ideas, I present them to her, and then I stop. I put my tail between my legs, and I stop trying to be the idea guy, and I say, Emily, how would you pull this across the goal line? What questions would you ask to make sure that this idea is clear and tangible and implementable? So when I have 1,000,001 ideas, what I do now is I stop right when I get into solution mode, because usually my solutions are unreasonable and not clear and not step by step. So what I'll do is I'll stop whenever I'm presenting these to Emily, because she's usually the person who receives my overabundance of ideas, which is a polite way to put it. Which is really just used to be overwhelming for her. I now stop and I say, how would you solve this? What would be your step-by-step plan? Because she's really high as a follow-through and higher on it as an implementer. Is that correct?
My highest is follow-through. I think I'm a 3.844.
So 3.844 is the Colby personality test. So anybody who hasn't taken that, and if you're working with a spouse, that is the first tip, within this. Knowing each other's strengths and weaknesses starts with data, and the best way to collect data on each other is through objective personality tests. I usually like to take them 2 times so that you know what you're doing the next time around you take a personality test. That has helped us tremendously, playing to each other's strengths and weaknesses. Our second tip is don't take for granted the fact that you spend so much time together.
And this is
big. This is huge.
Because like Bill said, we work together. Obviously, we live together. We eat practically every meal together. Just practically everything. We sit in the same office, 2 feet away from each other. So it's really easy and sometimes we don't even speak all day. Outside of, hey, Bill, da-da-da-da, asking questions. It's important, we found, to not take that for granted, the fact that we do spend so much time together. A lot of that is in the business, or thinking about the business, or talking about the business. And one thing we found that's really helpful is to kind of just carve out more personal time to do things that kind of bring us together, whether that's hiking with the puppy or just going shopping randomly, or even like food shopping.
Yeah.
Those are like fun little moments where we're not really thinking about the business, but we're spending time together.
The reason I agreed with this is not taking each other for granted based on all the time we spend together is because my guiltiness here is I'm so work-centered and Emily is so relationship-centered that I used to come in from work and think, well, what the heck? We spent all day together. Why do you want to still go to dinner with me? Can I hang out with my friend? Or can I read a book? Or can I do this strategic planning thing I wanted to do tonight? Can I take a course? And I used to think like she was being greedy. And she used to think the same thing about me, right? Because she thinks, because quality time to her isn't quality time to me. Quality time to me is us working together. Quality time to her, which she's opened me up to, like quality time to me now is more than just that.
Yeah.
But I love strategizing with her. I love when we go out to dinner and we talk about big ideas. So now what I've learned is that it all ties together. The key is just not taking it for granted. So for example, when we go out to dinner or when we go hiking with the puppy, we set an intention. Very simple. Hey, what's our intention for this? Is it legitimately to kill time? Is it to come up with the next big idea? Is it to help each other get out of this rut that we both know we're in some area of the business or of our life? What's the intention of this quality time that we're spending together? And that allows us to not take our time working so much together for granted.
The next one is praise in public, criticize in private. And this is something that I'm very adamant about.
You know what's funny is we are the opposites here.
We're the opposite. I won't
Emily's,
criticize Bill.
Emily is so much more introverted than me. She'll never compliment me in public, right? Until recently, you did it once, and I freaked out. I was like, "Thank you so much for complimenting me in front of everyone. That meant the world."
And
to
vice
me.
versa. I won't criticize.
Yeah, she
either.
She won't criticize.
I don't know what that is. Maybe it's I'm a very private person. That's why.
So with me, I'm the opposite.
Yeah.
My tendency is to do both in public, to criticize and praise. Right? I'm way more on the praise side, but with Emily, since Emily and I are so close, it can come off as criticism sometimes because I feel no need to hold back, right? With her, right? So sometimes I can come across as criticizing in public, which is not a good thing to do if you want to have synergy with your spouse in business. So that is a big tip. Praise in public. If they do something that's awesome in the business, say it in front of every employee. Okay? If they do something that you don't agree with, don't say it in front of every employee. This goes hand in hand with how you should treat your employees themselves too. So I think that's a great tip.
Weekly meetings and weekly readings. So one thing that we've committed to is having weekly meetings, and not just about the business, about us in general, as well as just everything going on in our lives. And that's, again, a form of carving out time for each other, which is really important. The other one is weekly readings. And so we had this book called 7 Principles of Making Marriage Work, and we've been reading that. And what's great is that it kind of points out areas that you aren't even aware of. It kind of just gives you a roadmap to, how would you say it, more artfully.
It gives you a framework. So one of the challenging things, so we do weekly meetings. Every week we have some form of a meeting where we go through what's working, what can be improved, and our goals, and then our finances. So we have 4 chunks of the meeting: what's working, what can be improved, goals, and finances. So we reiterate these things every week. But what happens is this gets so routine that we actually started pushing off the meetings. We started saying, no, we don't really need them. We already know what's working, what can be improved. Things don't change that dramatically every week. So weekly meetings and weekly readings came in when we decided we need to bring something new to our meetings, new information, new ways of thinking, ideas from experts. Hence, Emily actually was the one who came up with this. We picked up our first book, and now we're on the book, The 7 Principles of Making Marriage Work. And what we do is we each come with one concept in our meeting, and it allows our meeting to be much more tactically focused on one skill versus open-ended, what's working, what can be improved, which works, don't get me wrong, but it filters your conversation through the lens of an expert opinion so that you can then dissect your relationship based on that one opinion versus a million opinions. Tip number 5 is suppress your ego. This doesn't need to be that in-depth. It doesn't describe some complex rule, right? It really just comes down to not always having to be right. When you're working with your spouse, it's not just like you're complaining about, the oven or the dishes or the laundry, right? Your arguments are based on the thing that is sustaining your life, and that is your mothership for your future. The need to be right, the stakes are raised, right? We've noticed. So although the stakes are raised, you still need to suppress your ego. You still need to bite your tongue at times and go, interesting that your viewpoint is this. Where'd you come up with this viewpoint? How can I learn something from it? What do you mean by this viewpoint? Before you go in and start being like, no, I'm the one who's right. Why don't you get it? Why don't you get it, right? I don't think we really had problems with that. I think it's something that came more naturally to us because of our values. But I think that would help a lot of couples, is realizing that nobody needs to be right. You're just searching for the truth, not necessarily who's right, okay? The truth could be anybody right. Even you two both not being right.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
So if you actually just go into a world where the right idea is actually what you're seeking, that's more important than one of us being right. And that puts you into a curious mindset where you can suppress your ego. So that's tip number 5.
Tip number 6 is give space and make space.
Yeah, so I mean that one's very simple. Emily does a lot better at this than I do. Like, she spends time with friends and hangs out with people that she went to school with and goes out to brunch and has all these people that she has blogger friends, and
Bill is very...
Everything in my life's transactional pretty much, so.
No, it's not. You're just one-track minded. You're
Yeah.
very linear focused, and you're 100% focused on the task at hand, and you have little space for any nonsense,
New entrants,
I would
yeah.
say, or anything that could distract him from the goal that he's trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
And
So for us, it's different. Give space and make space, for me, is different than for Emily. For her, it's I need to give her space and make space for her to spend time with her friends, her long-lasting relationships, her blogging friends, these things that are important to you. Whereas you, on the alternative, you need to let me stay in that office until 9 p.m. 3 or 4 nights a week to really get my creative juices flowing, because when we're out of the line of fire after 5 p.m., that's where my creative thinking happens a lot. Mm-hmm. So giving space and making space means finding the areas in your relationship where you need alone time, or you need time without the other party, and then not getting personally all upset about it, and just making that space for your spouse.
Because it can be easy when you're combining you're living together, you're working together. It can be easy to fall into a trap of just, okay, we're just always together. We always do this. But it's important to make space for yourself. I really value alone time. I'm someone who recharges when I'm alone, just doing things that I love, even if it's like cleaning and organizing, which I do love, or catching up with friends. And for you, it's more so, like you said, having the space to stay in the office until 9, 10, 11 p.m. or going there every day of the weekend, 6, 7 weekends in a row.
Yeah, and then sometimes it's racing dirt bikes. If there's a part of the year where I'm doing my extreme sports challenge, or time at the gym. I don't like talking to anyone at the gym. There's tons of things where I just don't like talking.
Because you talk all day.
Regardless, we give each other space, and we make space for where we each need space.
Yeah.
And we don't get petty about that.
Yeah. The next tip is connecting in business is not the same as connecting as romantic partners. And this kind of coincides with our tip up here, is to not take each other for granted.
Okay, tip number 7. Push each other to be better. One of the best benefits and tips, I'd say, of being in business with your spouse is there is no escape, right? There's no hiding things. There's no, I can't put on a front of I'm feeling X way when I really feel Y way. It's so open and transparent to the point where it pushes you and it pushes us both to be on our A game all the time because there's no hiding. Another thing, another component of that pushing each other to be better is from the perspective of not being complacent, right? So you can have the transparency component, but there's another factor. You could be transparent with each other, but still not push each other. So there's another step up from the transparency, which is not just being, as they say in the book, radical candor, not being ruinously empathetic, meaning just supporting your partner in everything they do. Sometimes you shouldn't support your partner. You should look them in the eye and say, "What are you doing? We have X, Y, and Z goal. Why are you slacking here? Why are you being a weakling right now? Why are you thinking this way? What's going on? Come on, snap out of it." And having someone who loves you as a person and not just as a business associate telling you that sometimes has a bigger impact than someone who just works with you telling you that same information to step up. So what are your thoughts on pushing each other?
Well, I think the other area is in any relationship, you are each other's mirror. And so I can see things in Bill that I may not see about myself and vice versa. And I think that's been really helpful because it's kind of highlighted areas that we can improve personally. That will affect not just each other, but every single person that we interact with.
And I think another thing, like for me, like you've pushed me to become more empathetic. Because when I have a challenging problem emotionally at the business,
he just wants to push through.
I want to, my thing is like push brute force, right? Now she hears everything that goes on. She knows everything that goes on. So now without me forming a emotional response to brute force through something, I can go, how should I be thinking through this? The guy said this to me. He did this. They didn't match up. I just want to do this, and I'll say to Emily, am I thinking about this wrong? And over time, having someone with a completely different operating mindset than me, now I start to think, I know what my predisposition of thinking is, but now I start to think through an empathetic lens. And the same thing with her. Now she thinks through more of a risk-taking lens, more than you did before.
Totally.
Right?
Totally. Because I'm someone that I like structure, I like certainty, I like knowing what's coming next, and I like to be prepared. And so being with you, that's just not possible because every day is almost like a new day. And it's kind of gotten me out of my shell, and it's forced me to take those risks that I wouldn't take otherwise at all by any means.
Those are our tips in working with your spouse as an entrepreneur in business. Marriage and business is not easy, but
it's worth it.
It's totally worth it, and nothing great ever built in history was easy. So I highly recommend it. I don't know why there's all these people saying that you shouldn't work with your spouse. It's been one of the best decisions I think we've ever made. So
I do want to say though, it takes a certain concoction of personalities because there can be chemistry as partners, but there may not be chemistry in business because there might just be too much of butting of heads. I think the way that we make decisions and state our points complements each other because we're not butting heads. But it is worth it. But it is definitely hard work.
So, and another thing, last point is at the bottom of it all, the only reason that Emily joined our company is because she has some serious chops with social media. She does social media really well. Now she's morphed into more than just doing social media, but she would have never joined the company if she didn't have talent and valid skill in a valid area. And you didn't join the company until after almost a year and a half of me ideating the concept of the company, right? And you joined once there was a need for your skills. And remember, we talked about you quitting your job and all that, and we pushed it off and pushed it off and pushed it off and pushed it off until there was a valid need for the skills you bring to the market.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not about just hiring or working with your spouse just because it feels good or you need an emotional support. The number one decision to make first is
what is a logical decision.
Are they pulling their weight? Or can they pull their weight in some segment of your business? Don't try and fit them into your business's needs. Take their skills and their proven areas of competency and then fit it into your business needs. Don't take your business needs and then try and contort them to it.
And I think that goes with any position in the company.
But especially your significant other.
Yeah.
Right? Because if, like Mark Twain says, you cannot judge a fish on its ability to climb a tree. Right? And a lot of entrepreneurs try and fit their spouse into this multifaceted role in their company that doesn't leverage their strengths, creates tons of drama, and creates all these horror stories you hear about. So if you want more information on entrepreneurship, marketing, please subscribe to SMB Team's YouTube channel. We love offering you value like this. And then also, if you're interested, watch the video right up here. And I'll see you in that next video. But,
I won't see you.
Yeah, but make sure you subscribe, like this video, and leave a comment below if you want us to go deeper. If you want more videos like this, go deeper into any concept. We'd love to do that for you. Stay great.